Albany, New York. 2017. As she stood in front of the mirror, her shirt pulled up. The skin near her hip was red, raw seared. The smell of burning flesh still lingered in the room. A woman with a tool had just pressed it into her, like cattle. She was told it was a symbol of sisterhood, but what she didn't know was that the letters burned into her skin weren't sacred. They were the initials of the man who controlled them all. Sarah Edmondson had believed for years she was part of something good, a community of strength, growth, and love. But now, everything hurt. Her body, her mind, her past. And when she finally spoke out, everything came crashing down. This is a true story. A cult that branded women in secret, hidden behind the mask of self-help. Subscribe now to @Unbelievable True Story and watch to the end. June 5th, 2017, Albany, New York, USA. 10:23 a.m. The morning was quiet, but Sarah Edmondson's heart raced. Outside, the sun lit the leaves of the trees surrounding her home. Inside, she sat on the edge of her bed, trembling. Her husband, Anthony "Nippy" Ames, waited across from her, silent. She hadn't yet said what she came to say. How do you tell the person you love that you let someone brand your skin, that you were part of something unthinkable, that you followed a man you once called a genius and now realized was a predator? She lifted her shirt, revealing the faint outline of a scar just above her hip. His eyes widened. It wasn't just a scar. It was a symbol, and not one of love or growth, but of control. And in that moment, everything they thought was real began to crumble. Years earlier, Sarah had been a successful actress in Vancouver, Canada. Her life was fast-paced, but empty, always chasing the next audition, the next job, the next validation. Then, in 2005, a friend invited her to a workshop. It's like personal development, life coaching, but deeper, they said. It's called NXIVM. Sarah was skeptical, but curious. She flew to Albany and attended a 5-day intensive. What she found was addictive, bright banners, friendly faces, a structured system promising to change lives. They talked about ethics, personal growth, and unlocking human potential. It felt empowering, like she'd finally found her tribe, people who wanted to make the world better. Sarah quickly moved up in the ranks. She became a coach, then a top recruiter. She wore a sash. She took notes in color-coded binders. She memorized phrases from the curriculum, words written by a man she hadn't met yet, but already revered. Keith Raniere. They called him Vanguard. He was quiet, soft-spoken, intense, always surrounded by women, always asking questions that made people doubt what they believed. NXIVM wasn't just Sarah's job. It became her world. Her friends were in it. Her husband joined too. Her days were filled with calls, seminars, retreats. The organization grew, adding more programs. ESP, Executive Success Program. JNES, for women. SOP, for men. It all looked legitimate, but beneath the surface, the language was changing. Don't be a victim. Pain is growth. Trust the process. You chose this. Coaches encouraged members to hand over secrets, collateral, as a sign of commitment. Videos, letters, confessions. Things no one would want made public. Sarah gave hers too. Everyone did. It was required. Then, one day, an old friend approached her with something new, a secret women's group. It's invitation only, she said. It's for women who want to reach the next level. Total empowerment. Total freedom. The group was called DOS, a Latin acronym for Dominus Obsequious Sororium. Translated, Master over Slave Women. But Sarah wasn't told that part. Not yet. Submission disguised as sisterhood. To join, Sarah had to give more collateral. A video of herself, naked. A letter accusing a loved one of a crime they never committed. Her passport. Then came the vow, obedience. Total secrecy. She had to ask permission for everything. What she ate, when she slept, who she spoke to. Her master assigned her daily tasks, cold showers, calorie restrictions, readiness drills in the middle of the night. She thought it was about self-discipline. She believed it was for her growth. Until one night, she was blindfolded and led to a small room. A folding table, a medical lamp, other women waiting, silent, and the smell, the burning smell. A doctor took a cauterizing pen and branded her just above the HIP.NO anesthesia. No explanation. It took 30 minutes. Each stroke burned into her skin. She screamed. Her master held her hand and whispered, "Feel the pain. This is part of your transformation." Later, she found out what the brand was. KR, Keith Raniere's initials. The cracks began to show something broke in Sarah after that. The pain wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. A part of her, the part that believed in the mission, the sisterhood, the promise of better, was gone. She told her husband everything. He was horrified. Together, they began to investigate, quietly at first. Then they found others. Women who had also been branded. Women who hadn't escaped yet. Sarah realized she couldn't stay silent. She couldn't live with the scar. Without telling the world what it meant. So she made the bravest decision of her life. She went public. She reached out to journalists, lawyers, even the FBI. In October 2017, the New York Times published her story. The headline read, "Inside a secretive group where women are branded." And the world finally saw NXIVM for what it was. A cult. This is a real story. Every fact you hear is public. You can check it yourself. If real-life mysteries leave you breathless, subscribe now to Unbelievable True Story, because the next truth we uncover might hit even closer to home. When the New York Times article dropped in October 2017, Sarah Edmondson's name lit up headlines across the world. People couldn't believe it. A self-help group that branded women? A cult hiding in plain sight? It sounded like fiction, but it wasn't. Inside NXIVM headquarters in Albany, panic spread. Keith Raniere and his inner circle read the article and knew it was over. Sarah had done what no one else dared. She broke the code of silence, and now, the world was watching. Behind the curtain, Keith Raniere was no ordinary cult leader. He didn't wear robes or speak in riddles. He wore khakis, tennis shoes. He played volleyball every night at midnight and quoted philosophy like he invented it. He was called a genius, said to have one of the highest IQs ever recorded. His followers believed he was solving the world's problems: poverty, crime, corruption. But behind the soft voice and harmless exterior was a man who craved power, absolute, private, and unchecked. He controlled women using words, fear, and secrecy. That he created an invisible pyramid of obedience. The top was Keith. Beneath him, his first line, women who had pledged themselves to him, body and soul. One of them was Allison Mack, the former Smallville actress. She had once dreamed of being a star. Now, she was recruiting slaves, the DOS structure. A secret inside a secret. When the FBI began to investigate, what they uncovered was darker than anyone imagined. DOS wasn't just a group. It was a system, one built on control. Each woman had a master. Each master had slaves. Slaves could be ordered to recruit more slaves. Each level passed down instructions, punishments, and surveillance. Women had to ask permission to eat. They were told to send nude photographs every day to build discipline. They were punished if they failed. One woman was forced to hold a plank position for hours. Another was locked in a room for days, and all of it was recorded in journals, emails, texts, proof that would later expose Keith's secret empire. Sarah's story spread, so did fear among NXIVM's leaders. In late 2017, Keith fled to Mexico. That he settled in a villa near Puerto Vallarta, surrounded by loyal women. They believed the world had misunderstood him, that the media was lying, that Sarah had betrayed their sacred mission. But federal agents were closing in. In March 2018, Mexican police stormed the villa. Keith was arrested. His followers wept as he was taken away. Some tried to block the arrest. Others saying it was a surreal image, a man accused of enslaving women, being treated like a fallen prophet. But justice was just beginning. Courtroom Shocks. In 2019, the trial of Keith Raniere began in Brooklyn, New York. The courtroom was packed. Former members, journalists, survivors, all waiting to see what would come out. The prosecution laid it out clearly. Keith had created a criminal enterprise masked as a self-help company. He used fraud, coercion, and abuse to control dozens of women. The evidence was overwhelming. Journals, emails, audio recordings. One chilling tape caught Keith coaching Allison Mack on how to prepare women for branding. Have them say, "Master, please brand me. It would be an honor." The jury listened in silence. Victims testified, their voices shaking, their faces pale. They spoke about starvation, isolation, humiliation. One woman said she was told to smile during her branding or risk punishment. Each story was worse than the last, and still, Keith sat motionless, cold, detached, as if it wasn't real. The role of Allison Mack wasn't just a bystander. She was a recruiter, a master, and a true believer. She brought women into DOS with promises of strength and sisterhood. But in court, the truth was exposed. She had demanded photos, assigned punishments, watched as women were branded IT first. She denied everything. But later, faced with the reality of her actions and the depth of the damage, she broke down. She pleaded guilty. In her statement, she said, "I was wrong. I am so sorry to the women I brought into DOS. I believed I was helping, but I was lost." Sarah didn't testify in court. She didn't need to. Her voice had already sparked the investigation. But she did something else. She went on record, again and again, to help the public understand how something like this could happen. She joined documentaries, gave interviews. She published a memoir titled Scarred, where she told everything: the hope, the fear, the branding, the betrayal. She didn't hide. She didn't let shame silence her. She turned her trauma into truth. June 19, 2019, Brooklyn. Federal courtroom. The jury returned. Keith Raniere sat in a gray suit, his expression blank. Around him, the room was thick with tension. Victims, ex-followers, press, and the families of those who had once believed in NXIVM sat silently, waiting for what they had long feared, or long hoped. The judge looked at Raniere on 7 counts, including racketeering, forced labor, wire fraud conspiracy, sex trafficking, and the sexual exploitation of a minor. He was found guilty. Each charge carried years behind bars. When the final count was read, there was no reaction from Raniere. No tears, no apology, but in the audience, some wept. Others trembled. For Sarah Edmondson and the many women who had suffered in silence, it was not just a legal victory. It was the crumbling of a false world they'd once called home. Sentencing. The inner circle. The fall of Raniere was only the beginning. One by one, his top lieutenants, the women who had helped build DOS and enforce his rules, stood before the same judge. Allison Mack, once a glowing TV star, now wore prison blues and a haunted expression. She had pleaded guilty to racketeering and conspiracy. At sentencing, she spoke in a quiet voice. "I was wrong. I thought I was building character, but I destroyed lives. I am deeply ashamed." She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Lauren Salzman, daughter of NXIVM co-founder Nancy Salzman, had been raised in the teachings since childhood. She too had taken on the role of master in DOS. She admitted to confining a woman in a room for nearly 2 years for refusing to obey. She sobbed as she spoke of her regrets. She received a reduced sentence due to her cooperation. The most powerful figures in what was once portrayed as a community of healing were now exposed, not as leaders, but as enablers of cruelty. Justice for the silenced. Among the most heartbreaking testimonies during the trial was from a woman only referred to as Camila, a young Mexican national who had been brought into Keith Raniere's inner circle when she was just 15 years old. The jury heard how Keith had manipulated her, isolated her from her family, and coerced her into a secret sexual relationship that lasted for years. He recorded their encounters. He kept photos of her. This wasn't empowerment. It was exploitation of the worst kind. Camila's statement was read aloud at sentencing. "He robbed me of my youth. He branded others. He said we were enlightened, but he was feeding on our pain. The evidence was overwhelming. It wasn't a matter of misunderstanding. It was predatory, systemic, and real." The final judgment on October 27, 2020, Keith Raniere was brought back to court for sentencing. By then, over 15 victims had delivered statements. They described how he broke their spirits, turned friends into spies, and left them with scars, physical and emotional, that might never fade. The judge didn't hold back. He called Raniere ruthless and unrepentant. 120 years in federal prison. It was one of the longest prison terms ever handed down for a cult-related case. Raniere blinked slowly, still emotionless, still in denial. To this day, he maintains he did nothing wrong. From behind bars, he continues to communicate with a few remaining loyalists, but the empire he built is gone. For Sarah Edmondson and her husband Nippy, life would never be the same. They had spent years inside the system, recruiting others, teaching, believing, and then discovering they had helped fuel something monstrous. There was guilt, but there was also courage. They chose to tell the truth, even when it meant losing friends, facing threats, and living with shame. Sarah co-founded a support network for survivors of coercive groups. She spoke out at universities, cult recovery panels, and trauma conferences. She became a central figure in HBO's The Vow, a documentary series that followed the real-time unraveling of NXIVM. And yet, the scar on her hip never faded. She sees it every day. A reminder of what she escaped of what others didn't. The forgotten. Victims. Many women caught in NXIVM's web were immigrants, young women from Mexico, Canada, and South America. Some had given up everything to move to Albany, believing they were joining a movement of purpose. Some had lost family ties. Some lost years of their lives in silence. Their stories didn't make headlines, but they endured the same trauma. Restriction, branding, fear. A few still struggle to rebuild. Some refuse to talk at all. Because while the cult leader may be in prison, the psychological chains don't disappear overnight. The healing is slow. And sometimes, the damage is invisible. The story of NXIVM isn't just about one man or one cult. It's about how power hides behind charisma, how manipulation wears the face of kindness, how anyone, even smart, successful people, can be lured into something dangerous by believing they're doing something good. It's a story of blurred lines between growth and control, between motivation and exploitation, between truth and lies. This is not a movie. It happened. Today, the buildings that once held NXIVM's retreats are empty. The signs are gone. The banners folded away. But the memories linger, in journals, in photographs, in scars, the living rooms where women once whispered their fears, the dark rooms where branding irons burned flesh, the emails begging for food, permission, approval. They still exist, and the people who lived through it, they carry those moments. But they also carry strength, because in the end, the cult didn't win. The truth did. Have you heard this story before? What would you have done in Sarah's place? Could you have seen the warning signs? Or might you have believed, just like they did? If stories like this leave you shaken, if you believe the truth should always come to light, subscribe now to Unbelievable True Story, because every week, we tell real stories that others tried to bury, stories of pain and the courage to break free. And the next one might just change how you see the world forever. Watch the next story now, or dive into our full playlist of real crimes and shocking truths. The truth is never where you think it is.